And we're bringing on our next two guests. Nadia Ahmad is a DNC delegate from Florida, DNC Interfaith Council Co-Chair, DNC Women's Caucus Executive Committee member, part of Delegates Against Genocide, and a law professor from Orlando. She's also part of Ceasefire 2024, and she's filed a complaint with Chicago police against the Democratic National Committee over the Islamophobic attack she experienced at the Democratic National Convention, which we'll get into shortly. And Lauren Steiner is an activist, organizer, and independent journalist based in Asheville, North Carolina. She's fought against fracking, the climate crisis, education privatization, and the Trans-Pacific Partnership, TPP, and for net neutrality, clean energy, Medicare for all, racial, economic, and environmental justice, and Palestinian human rights. On her internet show, The Robust Opposition, she interviews organizers, activists, authors, and progressive elected officials and candidates. So welcome, Nadia and Lauren.
Hello.
Hi, thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having us.
Of course. So, I mean, we're going to show this video of what happened to you, Nadia. We have two videos actually capturing this moment. But before we do that, and in fact, we showed this last week to viewers. We talked about this last week. Before we do this, both Lauren and Nadia, tell us about the context, how you planned to do the protest that you engaged in at the DNC.
Well, I had been contacted in April about trying to approach all the 50 states Democratic conventions to get as many Biden delegates to flip to uncommitted as possible. It was a big effort, and I contacted Davida Ginsburg from If Not Now, which is the group that I organize with, along with Jewish Voices for Peace, to see if she would help me. And she said they don't do electoral work, but she put me in touch with two people from the uncommitted movement, Abbas and a guy by the name of Seth Woody from Momentum Strategies. And they said, Woody called me and he said they didn't have the capacity to do the 50 states. They were just concerned about the 12 uncommitted delegates that they already had, keeping them through Chicago. So I kind of dropped it. It was too much of an effort. Fast forward to like the first week in August, I get called by a friend of mine who's a Jewish Biden delegate from New Mexico. He tells me the uncommitted folks in his state wanted to know if he would go to the convention and try to get as many delegates as possible to vote no on the platform because it had a very bad ceasefire plank. And he asked me what I thought of that idea. And I said, well, why don't you do a disruption like we did in 2016? Because as a Bernie delegate in 2016, I organized this TPP disruption where as soon as the first person from the platform committee came to the podium and said the word platform, we had a mic check and then we all started shouting no TPP for several minutes. And it was very successful because we had like 2,000 Bernie delegates there and most of them participated. So I immediately called, he said he would do it. So I immediately called Nadia, who had been on my show with Ryan Grimm the first week in July, because this was even before Biden dropped out, because they had both written articles saying that there should be an open convention. And I knew about her work with, Ceasefire 2024. So the two of us decided to try to contact all the people that we knew to see how many delegates we could get to do a disruption like this. And our goal was to try to get 30 delegates. And over the next 10 days, we couldn't get to people because we found out that a lot of the ceasefire delegates who had been elected in their local districts were nixed by the Biden campaign from coming to the convention. They didn't want to have any protesters or agitators. So we got maybe about 10 people, but slowly they started dropping out. The person who contacted me from New Mexico, somehow his state party chair got wind of it and actually said to him, if you do this, we're going to take your credential. You're not going to be able to come back to the convention, and you're not going to be able to do anything in the Democratic Party in New Mexico ever again. And so he feels like he wanted to be able to influence young people, so he bowed out. And then we had some friends of Nadia's in Texas who said they would do it, and then they bowed out. And then we had some people in Washington state who were Jewish and then they bowed out. So we were down, like the day before this first day when Biden spoke, we were down to like 4 people. And I just said, all right, we'll just do a banner. And I was at a PDA event. I literally stole, whoever I stole this from, I apologize. I saw a white sheet, I nabbed it. And then I was going over to the Abandon Biden conference. Well, actually, they were relaunching as Abandon Harris. And I called Omar, who was in our group, not a delegate, but a supporter. I said, Omar, go get some paint. We're going back to the original thing. It's going to be Stop Arming Israel. See, we figured we wanted to start with that, but then we changed to ceasefire now because we thought Kamala's for ceasefire, Biden's for ceasefire, 78% of Democrats are for ceasefire. Maybe if we chant that, people will chant with us. But once we knew we couldn't chant because nobody would hear 4 people in a room full of 4,000, we just decided we were going to hold up the banner with what we really wanted to say, which was Stop Arming Israel. And I painted it. We went back to Nadia's hotel room. I painted it there. And then we blew dry it. We took a hair dryer and blew dry it. So when she put it under her, it wouldn't get smeared. And we went into the bathroom. And I gave Brad a photo of this. So if you want to show it.
Yeah. So there's Nadia sneaking it under her dress, right?
Yeah. And she kind of put it down her pants. And she actually had her daughter there, and her daughter was dressed up in this beautiful outfit. So we figured, who's going to bother a Muslim woman in a hijab with her cute daughter with a beautiful outfit? And they got in, and I'll let, Nadia take over the story from here.
Great.
Yeah, and I think it was a little bit I was a little nervous walking in. So you're nervous, but then you have to look calm as well, because if you look nervous, you'll get detected. And then when we got through security, it was that was the moment, like, okay, now this is gonna happen. But then we had to wait. We weren't sure exactly what the schedule was. We wanted to disrupt during when Biden was speaking, and then there was a surprise around 8:00. Vice President Kamala Harris ended up speaking as well. And so our plan kept getting delayed. Like our goal was, we had contacted some of the reporters in advance, was about 2 minutes into Biden's address, we would disrupt. And so we started counting down, but then people just kept applauding when he was there. So then I think we ended up doing it like a few more minutes into it. And we thought, okay, we're going to have the sign ripped off and taken away from us. And that'll be at the end of it. They may take us outside or arrest us. But whatever's, like, we were prepared to handle that. But in all the contingencies that we had, because we were on the floor, and so when we're on the floor, we only the people who have access to the floor are allowed to it. So my daughter wasn't able to be on the floor. I had to send her with a friend. And when we got to the floor, it's just like this, like, sheer euphoria for Biden. All of us were really kind of disgusted by that, because this is essentially like a rubber stamp on the genocide that is happening in Gaza. And when we decided to unroll the banner, it was really like, I think we were down to like, I'm going to do it in a minute. And then Liano told me, no, we need to do it within 10 seconds. And so then countdown 10 seconds. And then I held up the banner, and it was, and then started counting again, how long, like hold it up for a minute or two and do that. But then I just kept counting and counting. And then in the meantime, the banner is like humongous. It's like a bed sheet, right? And I'm tall, but not that tall. And so I had to hold it over my head essentially to make it visible. And then as they were doing all this, I saw from the side of my side that they started handing out very rapidly these "We Love Joe Biden" signs. And as they were handing out those signs, they were using those signs to block our sign. And they were doing a good job of that. Then they also started handing those signs out in the back where they had the box office where the people who attacked me were seated. And I didn't even realize what was happening because I can't see in front of me, and the people are attacking me from the back. And when I went back is when I really saw what was happening. I didn't know the sign was being used to attack me. I just like could feel something. And the first few times they hit me, I kind of fell forward and like fell into my chair. And then like our goal was, okay, we're just gonna hold the sign no matter what until they take it away. Like in that plan, like in the adrenaline and the energy of it, there wasn't a plan when people start hitting you on the head with the "We Love Joe Biden" signs. Like that just wasn't like planned, and we were just kind of like I was like laser focused on just holding the sign at all costs. And when they started hitting, I was just like, okay, just stand up again and then do that. And then they started hitting again more. And then a short while later, they kind of just ripped the banner away from us. But this we thought would happen in a minute or two. It ended up being closer to 4 minutes because what they did is they actually dimmed the light. So we couldn't even see, nobody could see what was happening. Like they were trying to cover it up, but then in covering it up, they actually made it worse because they started hitting me. And then also when I looked over at the footage that Prem Talker had taken from Zatio, he actually showed, and Keila Lacey also from The Intercept had also taken some of the footage along with Ryan Grimm at Drop Site. And we could see later on that like the governor of Illinois is sitting in the box right next to them, along with like the DNC staff and the top level officials from the Harris campaign. And they just looked. And what really made me annoyed is like the governor of Illinois, as he saw this happening, like he's watching, like he's looking literally at it, and just looks away and then starts looking back to what Biden is saying. It's like he doesn't care. It's like no bystander training or concern at all.
Well, let's show first. Let's show you guys unfurling the sign, and then we're going to show you getting hit on the head, Nadia.
Impossibility. Fair. Impossibility.
No, this is the wrong.
We're in the grip of a once-in-a-century pandemic. Historic joblessness. Calls for racial justice long overdue.
So that's them trying to block your sign with their signs.
And that's where they're hitting me.
And then we'll show another angle of them hitting you. Yeah, you can see the thing moving. That's the guy hitting her with his sign. Okay, now let's show the other one where you see you're getting hit in the head.
We had to meet. Was as I told you then. Winter of peril.
So again, let's just watch it again. You can see. You see? There it is. So, I mean, what did you think when this first happened? Like, what did you think was actually happening to you?
I had no idea. Like, I had no idea a sign was being used. I could just felt something just like hitting on the head. I didn't know what it was. And then my mom asked me, like, why didn't you turn around and stop them or do that? And I thought, well, if I did that, then my sign will fall down.
Yeah.
And I really wasn't thinking. And I was also worried, like, what would happen? Like, if I turned around, then I may lose control of something. And it's also like you're in a really tight spot. So even to like turn around in that spot, you can like lose your balance and
Right.
as well. So I didn't know what was worse, is to like kind of fall, because I'd already fallen one time. And I just like you don't really think about what's happening completely rationally. You're just trying to kind of get done. And when the security actually came through, it's not as if they escorted out. It's because Amy Goodman from Democracy Now! was there with photographers and videographers as well, and they also, I think, had at least 2 camera people there. And so when they realized it was Amy Goodman and Ryan Grimm there, what they started doing is basically blocking their cameras with other signs. So not only were they not letting us exercise our First Amendment rights, they were also inhibiting the freedom of the press, and that both of them were like credentialed. And it's just like completely unbelievable. And when the police finally showed up after like 3.5, 4 minutes, they were starting to take Liana down, because the woman who was sitting next to him.
And that's one of your fellow protesters, right? One
Right.
of the other delegates who happens to be Jewish.
Yeah, no. So there was actually another Muslim delegate who was from California, who was also part of this, and he had brought somebody who was a state, either a candidate or somebody who was elected from California, and she actually had a baby with her. So that was like another decoy that we had. But once everything started getting violent, then like they had to leave right away, because it's like literally a baby. But they don't care. They don't care. So they left right away. So then right next to Liano came another woman, and this woman was starting to get aggressive with him to try to cause an altercation. And so this woman that was there, because she was causing the altercation, that's why security wanted to remove them. But by that time, Amy Goodman was there and she was asking Liano questions. And so I remember the security officer saying something to the effect that you need to come down because we're scared that somebody may fall down, because it's just kind of at a steep angle. And so he said that, you can go outside and answer your questions. So Liano left, followed by this slew of reporters and videographers. And Isam and I were just like left standing there because they didn't remove us. We didn't do anything wrong. We just held up the sign. And in fact, the people who were hitting us from behind, they didn't do anything to them at all. It was just like completely like surreal that this was happening to us.
And Lauren, where were you when this was happening?
I was in Nadia's hotel room, and it was hysterical because we were told, I had read that Joe Biden was going to be on early and that Hillary Clinton was going to have prime time. So I guess, I don't know, maybe he was offended by that and they put him in prime time. But
he wanted to prove that he could stay up late, that he wasn't
Yeah, exactly. It wasn't past his bedtime. Right. So I was getting, really antsy, and I had all these reporters. I should give a shout out to Melissa from Code Pink because she was helping with publicity.
Garriga.
She had sent press releases to everybody, and she had what she called friendlies who were, Prem Tucker he used to be with The Intercept, now he's with Zateo, and Akilah Lacey with The Intercept. I was in touch with Ryan Grimm from Dropsite News directly, and somebody from Al Jazeera and Democracy Now! So basically, I told Melissa, when we figured out this plan, I said, make sure they get to the Florida delegation, for Biden's speech. And that's all we told them, because we didn't know. And the same thing with the AP person. I had the AP person calling me because she had met Nadia at the Bandon Harris press conference. And what she did wrong was and this went out to all AP is wire service, so all the people picked it up. She called them abandoned Biden protesters. And I had to contact her and say, why did you say that? They're not abandoned Biden, they're Harris delegates. Second of all, they're not protesters, they're delegates. She almost made it look like protesters got into the hall. And that's not the story. The story is they're attacking their own delegates. And that's what Akilah Lacey, in her long article on it, was able to get right and to show how tone deaf that was. And then these guys were on Democracy Now! The next day. And Isam was talking about, because he's Egyptian. He's an Egyptian immigrant. And he's been in this country like maybe 2 years. He's actually a professor. He was at Wesleyan. I don't know if you knew that. He was at Wesleyan teaching political science, and now he's starting at Cornell. But anyway, he was in an Egyptian jail because he was running against the military dictatorship. He was in the opposition party. So that's what military dictators do. They jail you. And as soon as he got out, he fled to the United States. So he was telling Amy Goodman how, here I'm going to the land of the free and the home of the brave. I sort of put this line in his head, actually. But you're not really free, because the irony is here you have the Democratic Party who's running on democracy versus fascism. And they're the ones who are, beating delegates over the head with a sign that has the word love in it, for merely expressing their First Amendment rights to stop a genocide. I mean, the irony is so thick, you can cut it with a knife.
Yeah, you can't make it up, the metaphor. And Nadia, tell us about who participated in this attack on you, because you have you tweeted out a formal complaint that you filed against Jamie Harrison, who's the chair of the Democratic National Committee. And you go through the individuals who participated in that. Can you talk about who they are? We can also show that on the screen if you want. That. Yeah,
sure. You're welcome to share the message that I shared on the tweet. So the complaint was to Jamie Harrison as the chair of the Democratic National Committee, and we were actually told to file the complaint. And so I specifically named the people who were assaulting us. They were Brent Booker, Michael Sabatini, Michael Hellstrom, Oscar De La Torre, and Scott Gustafson. And Scott Gustafson was actually the one who first started hitting me really hard, and then one of the Michaels started hitting as well, and then Brent Booker also partook in that, and then the other Michael and Oscar, they were actually part of kind of really violently pulling away the sign at the very end. And so on Wednesday, I went and filed.
And this is, by the way, this is the Labor's International Union of North America.
Right. And what one thing that's interesting is that is actually the labor union that it was sponsoring the DNC, and they had a big box office suite for them. And the way we were able to identify it is because on their box office, the seats had orange covers, like bright orange covers, and none of the other box offices had that. Like, they were very proud in portraying that they were sponsoring. And in fact, it was even on the lanyards that are handed out to all the delegates. Like Launa is actually listed on there, like it's Launa and then DNC, like on all of the lanyards that were given out. So they were like a big sponsor in all of this. And what I felt is when the next day when they took away my credential, just I was the only one who had actually been who had any like action taken. It wasn't done on behalf of the DNC. The DNC actually has a spokesperson on record saying that there was no revocation or impact to my credential. It was basically the Florida Democrats at their discretion deciding they didn't want to have me on the floor again. And the reason they didn't want to have me on the floor again is because I would identify those people, because they would be seated directly behind me. I also didn't feel safe going back. And so I didn't feel safe going there with my head again turned to them, sitting in that same area. So I tried to also get a no contact order, which in the circuit court of or criminal court at Cook County, just kind of left with having to file an official complaint to the DNC, which they haven't really done anything about. Progressive Democrats of Florida had also followed up, but really it's just like horrifying that, and even like Ash, who was just on a little while ago, talking about like these types of like horrific violent crimes, and nothing's done about it. I mean, and the governor of Illinois is like looking on as it's happening and just nothing.
Also, I mean, this is a pretty newsworthy story, and I haven't seen anyone outside of progressive and alternative media bringing this up at all. Has anyone approached you from any corporate media?
They've approached me, but they haven't covered it.
Right.
Well, CNN, Jake Tapper and Abby Phillip did do something.
Whoa,
and I was really impressed. They didn't show the hitting. I don't know that they were aware of the hitting, but Jake Tapper introduced it like, you would not have seen this if you were watching this on network TV, but here's what happened. So
and he just showed the protest banner. He showed the banner. Okay.
And I love that, because Abby Phillip was the one. I never tire of telling this story. I'm sure you remember it, Katie.
Yeah.
When during the debate, she says to Bernie, why did you tell Elizabeth Warren that a woman couldn't be president? And he said, well, I never told Elizabeth Warren a woman couldn't be president. And she turned right to Elizabeth Warren and says, how did you feel when Bernie Sanders told you? Completely
it was beyond infuriating.
His answer. So she's like, I'm not a big fan of hers. So I was pleased to see at least she did this,
Yeah.
And somebody actually told me that the reason why they kept handing out all the signs to hide our sign was because Jake Tapper was actually looking directly at us, because he was seated right in front of us, and so they were concerned that he would catch, like he would see it, like he had already seen it. It was a matter of if the news would actually pick it up, and they just did a horrible job of managing that.
I want to show a clip. I want to contrast what happened to you, because when I showed this last week, I said, can you imagine if this happened to someone in a yarmulke? Like if someone hit someone wearing a yarmulke with the sign, I mean, it would be discussed as an anti-Semitic attack in headlines and nonstop media coverage. And I want to contrast what we saw happening to you, where you're obviously hit on the head intentionally by someone, and you're wearing a hijab, and that didn't get any mainstream coverage, but you got tons of mainstream coverage of this Jewish student who claimed that she was stabbed in the eye. And here's the footage of it.
See, she's in the middle of the protest. she's recording. There's people who are all around her. You know, they're wearing their keffiyehs. They're doing their thing. They're moving by. Okay, I don't know, you know, exactly what's happening here, but there's just a lot of people moving around.
All right.
Someone comes close. Okay. Oh, there's
Here
the
it
flag. And
so yeah, then she goes, ow, ow, my eye, and then winds up on Piers Morgan and wall-to-wall media coverage.
Well, you know, CNN has to have their stories about this conflict. I put conflict in, you know, or war approved by Israel. And, you know, I think it was Wolf Blitzer used to work for the
AIPAC.
Jerusalem Post. Yeah.
And AIPAC too, yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's really horrible.